They arrested a female Navy commander. Then an admiral entered and froze when he saw her tattoos. She waited quietly in the crowded lobby of the naval base's administrative office, clutching a worn duffel bag and avoiding the curious stares. Without warning, officers approached and placed handcuffs on her wrists. No clear charges, no explanation given. A female Navy commander, suddenly treated like a common suspect. The tension was thick as she was escorted through the building, whispers spreading among the staff. The routine proceedings took an unexpected turn when the heavy doors swung open and a high-ranking admiral entered the room, his eyes immediately drawn to the faded trident tattoo peeking beneath her sleeve. Silence fell like a weight as he paused, recognizing the symbol and the woman from a past shrouded in classified missions and sacrifice. In that instant, everything changed about the quiet commander they thought they knew. The truth behind her service was about to come to light, rewriting her story forever. And before I forget, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And if you're new here, consider subscribing to our channel so you don't miss tomorrow's special video. I guarantee you won't want to miss it. The line at the naval base checkpoint moved slowly. A heat shimmer hovered above the asphalt, and the only sounds were the hum of idling engines and the bark of boots on concrete. She stood beside a worn navy blue sedan with civilian plates, her hands calm at her sides. Faded gray cargo pants, standard issue boots, scuffed but clean. A plain gray t-shirt stretched softly across her shoulders, short sleeves hiding most of the scars, but not all. Her hair was pulled into a tight bun, strands graying at the temples, though she couldn't be older than 30. She wore no rank, no insignia, no name tag. To the young gate officer, she looked like a contractor, maybe logistics. Not worth a second thought, until she reached for her duffel bag. "Ma'am, I'll need to see base credentials," he said, trying to sound firm. She offered a small nod and pulled a leather folder from the bag. Thick, weathered. She held it out. Not aggressively, not apologetically, just steady. The officer frowned. His name tag read Dawson. He opened the folder and blinked. "Ma'am, this ID's outdated. Expired. And it says you're a commander?" She didn't speak. Her expression didn't shift. He swallowed and straightened his shoulders, posture stiffening with protocol he hadn't earned yet. "I'm sorry, but I'm going to need you to step out of the vehicle." Around them, the checkpoint buzzed with quiet activity, Marines watching from shaded posts, other drivers peering through windshields. No one knew her. No one intervened. She stepped out without a word. Two military police approached. Young, polite, but clearly uncertain. They flanked her loosely as Officer Dawson gestured toward her car. "Do you have any weapons, ma'am?" She nodded once. "In the trunk." Secured. They opened it. Inside, a single long black case with a combination lock, her duffel bag, and a neatly folded desert camo jacket. The case looked like it hadn't been touched in years, but the jacket was immaculate. Dawson exchanged glances with the MPs. One of them, Rodriguez, opened the duffel. There were no explosives, no classified materials, just spare fatigues, a toothbrush, a folded flag, and a worn paperback copy of the things they carried, the title nearly rubbed off from use. Dawson tapped his comms. "We've got a possible ID fraud at Gate 2. Civilian claiming rank. Base commander may need to be notified." She said nothing. Rodriguez glanced at her again, eyes drifting down her arm where the sleeve had risen slightly. There, just above her elbow, something dark, old ink, curled into view. A tactical insignia he didn't recognize. "Ma'am," he asked, quieter now. "Where do you serve?" She looked him in the eye. Her voice was quiet, level. "Ramadi." Then Bagram. Then off books. The way she said it made the silence around her stretch just a bit longer. But Dawson was already lifting his hand. "Commander or not, you're unauthorized. Hands behind your back, ma'am." She complied without flinching. As they cuffed her, no one saw the silent exchange between two older men at a nearby watchtower. One of them, silver-haired and motionless, narrowed his eyes. He had seen that tattoo once before, under different light, different war, and he was already moving. The cuffs were snug, not painful, not insulting, just protocol applied blindly. The woman in gray didn't resist. She didn't explain. Her face remained unreadable as the MPs gently guided her toward the holding office beside the checkpoint. A prefab building with flickering fluorescent lights and a stained coffee machine humming in the corner. Inside, a young sergeant named Kelso glanced up from behind the desk. He looked barely 22. His eyes moved from the cuffs to her face, then down to the open folder Dawson was now holding. "Who is she?" "Claims to be a Navy commander," Dawson said. "But the ID's expired. No recent activity in the system. No appointment, no clearance." Kelso raised a brow, then tilted the folder toward himself. "Commander V. Rains," he read aloud. "No middle name?" "V is the middle name," she said quietly. Dawson gave her a glance, surprised she finally spoke. Kelso kept flipping through the folder, then paused. Something about the texture of the page had changed. There was a second layer, a laminated insert, tucked behind the standard ID. It wasn't visible at first. He slid it out. The background wasn't blue. It was matte black, embossed. Kelso's mouth opened slightly. "Where did you get this?" he asked, softer now. She didn't answer. Dawson took it from his hand and frowned. "What is it?" Kelso swallowed. "This is JSOC clearance. Tier 1. But this kind of badge, it's not issued unless..." "Unless what?" He didn't finish. Dawson laughed nervously. "Outdated or not, she doesn't have orders." "So, what?" She was important. Behind them, the door swung open. A quiet breeze moved in first. Then came the sound of deliberate footsteps, the kind that didn't hurry but never wasted time. The man who entered didn't announce himself. He didn't need to. Rear Admiral Leon Mercer was a legend across 3 oceans. Combat decorated. Black shoes always polished. Suit perfectly creased. And today, something in his expression looked heavier than usual, as if he'd just been pulled from a memory that hadn't faded. His gaze went past Dawson, past Kelso, straight to her. His steps slowed, then stopped. He looked at her hands. The cuffs, the duffel bag on the table, the old folder still open, and finally, at the faded ink on her arm. For 3 full seconds, no one spoke. Then, softly, almost a whisper, he said, "Verity." The entire room turned. Her expression didn't change, but something behind her eyes flickered. Recognition, maybe even regret. "Sir," she said simply. The Admiral exhaled once, deep and slow, as if trying to measure how much he should say. His voice, when it came, was barely louder than hers. "Who put cuffs on her?" Dawson stepped forward. "Sir, we had no way to confirm. I didn't ask for excuses." His voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "Unlock them. Now." Rodriguez moved first, keys already in hand. As the cuffs clicked open, the room went so quiet the air conditioner hum became deafening. The Admiral stepped forward, not to embrace her, not even to shake her hand. He simply looked down at the exposed ink on her arm, a black trident with 2 coordinates etched beneath. Then he spoke again, this time not to her, but to the room. "Do any of you know what that tattoo means?" Blank stares. A pause. Then, softly, "She's the reason I'm alive." No one in the room moved. Not even Dawson. The words sat heavy in the air. "She's the reason I'm alive." Rodriguez shifted slightly, a breath caught in his throat. Kelso looked down at the black laminated insert again, now understanding why it didn't scan. It wasn't made for databases. It was made for ghosts. Admiral Mercer's gaze lingered on the coordinates inked beneath the trident. Barely legible now, weathered from sun and time, but to him, they might as well have been burned into stone. He didn't ask if they were real. He already knew. "Afghanistan?" Kelso asked softly. The Admiral turned to him. "South of Kamdesh," he said. "A covert recovery op October. 12 years ago. It never made the reports." He looked back at her. She walked 5 days through enemy terrain with 3 wounded operators strapped to a makeshift sled. No air support. No backup. Only a sat phone with dying batteries and her rifle. Verity said nothing. She didn't need to. Rodriguez looked at her differently now, not with awe, but with something deeper. Reverence. He tried to imagine her in the mountains. Tired. Bleeding. Moving forward anyway. "Why didn't you say anything?" he asked quietly. She glanced at him. "Would you have believed me?" His shoulders sank. He didn't respond. Dawson stepped back, unease rippling through him. He looked at the cuffs in his hand as if they were burning. I didn't know, he said. No, she replied. You didn't. There was no anger in her voice. Just fact. Admiral Mercer moved toward the desk, picked up her duffel, ran his hand over the patch stitched near the zipper. It was so faded it looked blank. But he remembered that symbol. Task Force Ember. Decommissioned. Disavowed. But not forgotten. He set the duffel down carefully. You didn't come back for ceremony, he said to her. No, sir. You didn't come for recognition. No. He studied her. Then his voice dropped to something gentler. Then why now? She hesitated, then reached into her pocket and withdrew a folded photo. She handed it to him silently. He unfolded it. A grainy image. A younger woman, same eyes, standing beside a flag-draped coffin. Behind her, a child held tight to her leg. This was my sister, Verity said, her voice steady. She died 2 months ago. Cancer. The Admiral blinked. She raised my niece while I was deployed. Every year. Every school pickup. Every scraped knee. She took a slow breath. Now there's no one left. Except me. The Admiral looked again at the photo. The child couldn't have been older than 6. Big eyes. Holding a dog tag like a talisman. Verity continued, her voice quieter now. She's waiting at the visitor center. They wouldn't let her on base. Admiral Mercer straightened. She'll be brought in immediately. And you, he turned to the room, will treat this commander with the respect owed to her. No one speaks her name without standing first. Understood. The room murmured a stunned, yes, sir. Verity turned her face away slightly. Not to hide emotion, just to breathe. The base visitor center sat at the edge of the perimeter wall, a glass and concrete structure trying too hard to feel warm. Inside, the walls were lined with outdated posters about enlistment benefits, faded plaques from forgotten deployments, and a vending machine that only half worked. In the back corner, a girl sat with her legs tucked up in a vinyl chair far too big for her. 10 years old, maybe 11. Small frame, dark hair in a messy ponytail. A canvas backpack rested on the floor beside her feet, its zipper half open, revealing a dog-eared graphic novel and a folded American flag. She wore a hoodie that swallowed her shoulders. Across the front, in peeling letters, Navy Brat, a hand-me-down from an older cousin. No one had talked to her in over an hour. The receptionist had offered her a juice box. She said thank you. She hadn't touched it. Then came the knock, deliberate, not rushed. Admiral Mercer stepped through the door, his white uniform a sharp contrast against the beige walls. 2 MPs followed behind, but their posture was relaxed now. Respectful. The girl looked up, cautious. The Admiral stopped a few feet away. You must be Lily. She nodded, uncertain. Yes, sir. I'm Admiral Mercer. I served with your aunt. He crouched slightly to meet her eyes. She's here now. Something flickered in the girl's expression, a hesitation trying not to be hope. She's really here? She is. And she asked me to come get you. Lily stood quickly, shouldering her bag. Is she in trouble? Mercer smiled gently. Not anymore. He offered his hand. She didn't take it. Not out of rudeness, just instinct. But she followed him. As they walked through the gate, a few enlisted men glanced their way. Mercer didn't explain. Lily didn't ask questions. But when they passed through the checkpoint and the girl saw her aunt, standing tall, hands clasped behind her back, she broke into a run. Verity bent low as Lily crashed into her. It wasn't a long embrace. It didn't need to be. It held everything. When they pulled apart, Lily whispered, I waited. I know, Verity said. Her hand rested on the girl's head a moment longer. Then she stood straight again. Admiral Mercer watched the exchange, arms folded. Something about Verity's posture had shifted, not defensive anymore. Just grounded. You're staying for a while, he said. It wasn't a question. Verity looked at her niece. She needs stability, a routine, and answers. And what about you? She met his gaze. I've had enough silence. Mercer nodded slowly. I've seen your file, Verity. The redacted one. Not many could carry what you carried and still walk upright. She looked down briefly, then back up. You only bend when you forget why you stood up in the first place. He almost smiled. Almost. Come with me, he said. There's someone you should meet. She glanced at Lily. She can come, too, Mercer added. Verity nodded once. And together, they walked deeper into the base, into a past not yet finished. They walked in silence past the admin buildings and motor pool, past the chow hall and the rows of parked Humvees that hadn't moved in weeks. Marines glanced up as they passed, some recognizing the Admiral, none recognizing her. But Verity's eyes scanned every corner, every alley. Even now, especially now, she moved like someone trained to survive ambush. They stopped at a squat, concrete building near the old comms tower. No signs, no cameras, just a fingerprint scanner and a faded keypad. Admiral Mercer keyed in a code and pressed his thumb to the glass. The lock clicked. The door opened. He stepped inside. Verity followed, with Lily at her side, her small hand still holding tight to Verity's cargo pants. The hallway inside was cold, clean, fluorescent lit, the kind of sterile that feels like secrets. At the end of the corridor, the Admiral paused in front of a steel door with no handle. This room, he said quietly, is not on any tour. He tapped another code. The door opened with a hiss. Inside, the lights came on slowly, motion-triggered. The room was quiet, almost reverent. Along the walls were plaques. Bronze. No names. Just call signs, operations, mission dates. Some bore nothing at all. In the center, mounted under glass, was a large steel panel, pockmarked, scarred, slightly burned. Verity stopped in front of it. Her hand moved instinctively to her ribs. She remembered the sound of the bullet that had torn through it, the heat, the silence afterward. Mercer watched her. You dragged 3 men across 20 clicks of mountain while bleeding from a collapsed lung. I dragged 4, she corrected softly. Only 3 made it. Lily looked up at her aunt. Verity didn't hide the memory. She didn't sugarcoat it. But she didn't linger, either. Why bring me here? She asked. Mercer gestured to the plaques. You're not listed. Anywhere. She nodded. I know. You should be. Verity turned. I gave that up when I signed the final op. You were ordered not to speak of it. That doesn't mean it didn't happen. She didn't respond. But Lily did. Her voice, barely a whisper. You save people? Verity knelt, slowly, looked her niece in the eyes. Yes, she said. Did they say thank you? She smiled faintly. Not all of them. Some couldn't. Some didn't know. Lily thought about that. Then quietly, she said, thank you. Verity looked away just long enough to collect herself. Then she stood and faced Mercer. I didn't come here to be remembered. Mercer nodded. Then stay for her. He reached into his jacket and handed her a folded sheet of paper. It was an offer, not a commendation. A job. Instructor. Tactical Intelligence Division. Civilian contractor. Flexible terms. On base. Near the school. Verity's fingers brushed the paper, but she didn't take it yet. I'll think about it. You have until tomorrow. She gave a quiet nod. But inside, she already knew her answer. The classroom was windowless, tucked behind a row of unused barracks. It smelled faintly of gun oil and chalk, an odd combination that somehow fit. No fanfare greeted her first day. She arrived early, wore a plain black tactical shirt and neutral slacks. No insignia, no name tag, just her duffel bag, and a presence no one could explain. The young recruits were already waiting, 20 of them, seated in perfect rows. All had passed the minimums. Most were eager. A few looked cocky. One smirked when she entered. No one stood. She didn't ask them to. Instead, she set a single item on the desk in front of her, a thick binder marked redacted in bold stencil. Then she wrote her name on the board. Commander V. Rains, Ret. That caught a few eyes. But still, the room stayed quiet. She turned to face them. My name is Verity Rains. You'll address me as Commander or Ma'am. I won't be your friend, but I'll be fair. You're here because someone thinks you're ready to learn something that matters. She let the pause hang. I'm here to see if they're right. In the back, a recruit, shaved head, broad shoulders, early 20s, leaned toward the guy next to him and muttered, What's she gonna teach? How to fold a shirt. Verity walked to the corner of the room, opened a locker, and pulled out a whiteboard. She scrawled 2 coordinates. Then, next to it, a word, Kamdesh. Who can tell me what happened here in October, 12 years ago? The class shifted. Only one hand went up. Private Lou, she said, nodding. Kamdesh. Firebase, Keating was overrun. One of the deadliest engagements of the war. 2 medals of honor awarded. She nodded. Correct. Now tell me who recovered the bodies from the ridge the day after. Lou hesitated. I don't know. Exactly, Verity said. Because they weren't supposed to. That team was never acknowledged. She stepped forward. I was there. I was your age. And I'm still here. The smirking recruit in the back frowned now. He squinted. Wait. You're the one from the story, the operator who? She didn't nod. She didn't confirm. She simply walked back to the desk and sat down. If you want worse stories, transfer to a bar. If you want to learn how to move without being seen, think without being told, and act without hesitation, you'll listen. And you'll earn your right to be in this room. The room went still. One by one, spines straightened. No one interrupted again. And as the first hour passed, covering urban recon, counter-surveillance, and layered deception, even the most skeptical among them began to realize. She wasn't here to inspire them. She was here to prepare them. And that was far more terrifying. The training day had stretched long into the late afternoon, the sun outside casting elongated shadows through the narrow slats of the barracks windows. The classroom was heavy with the scent of dry erase markers and stale coffee, the quiet hum of air conditioning the only sound beneath the steady scratching of pens on notebooks. Yet the silence between the words spoken by Commander Verity Rains was far heavier than any noise could be. She had run them through a series of tactical drills, urban recon, layered deception, close-quarters movement, but it was never just the physical rigor that tested them. It was the way she commanded the room with an unyielding presence that refused to be broken or bargained with. She spoke little, but every word landed like a stone thrown into still water, rippling out and settling deep in their minds. No jokes, no casual smiles, no empty praise. At the end of the day, when the final slide faded and the recruits packed up their gear, Verity dismissed them with a single nod, sharp and deliberate. No good job. No see you tomorrow. Just silence and the subtle firmness of discipline. Outside the classroom, the sound of boots and murmured conversations rose and fell. Most of the recruits filtered away quickly, eager for a break from the intensity. But Private Chun lingered by the lockers, his youthful face marked with the fatigue of the day and something else. Respect, maybe, or the first flicker of understanding. He watched quietly as Verity methodically folded her tactical jacket, then unzipped her worn duffel bag and carefully repacked her essentials. Her movements were precise, almost ritualistic, a practiced calm hiding decades of battles no one knew about. Summoning courage, Chin finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. Commander. She looked up, eyes meeting his, steady, calm, like a lighthouse in a storm. I wanted to say thanks. She raised an eyebrow slightly, a subtle invitation to continue. For what? She asked softly, voice low but clear. Chin swallowed, searching for the right words. For not making this easy. For making us earn it. He paused, glancing toward the exit as if nervous to reveal more. I've had instructors before. They'd tell stories, laugh, give out medals. But you don't do that. You make us work. Harder than I thought possible. Her lips lifted just a fraction, a small, genuine smile, rare and fleeting. That's the point, she said quietly. I'm not here to entertain. I'm here to prepare you. If you waste that, you waste your own life. Chin nodded solemnly, taking a step back as if afraid to break the fragile moment. Verity hoisted her bag over her shoulder, turned, and walked down the empty corridor. Her footsteps echoed softly, a steady beat of discipline and resilience. At the end of the hall, a door creaked open, a room that had long become her refuge from the noise. Inside, the air smelled of aged paper and dust, faintly mingled with the faint trace of gun oil, memories trapped in scent. She approached a worn desk where an old leather-bound journal lay waiting. The cover was cracked and softened from years of use, the pages thick with inked notes, coordinates, sketches of terrain, and lists of names, ghosts of missions long past. Her fingers traced the edges tenderly, a silent conversation with her past. One page held a faded photograph taped carefully, a younger Verity, dressed in full combat gear, standing side by side with two men. Their faces were grim but hopeful, eyes reflecting the weight of their shared burden. The photo was worn at the edges, as if touched often, a talisman against forgetting. She sighed, the breath soft but heavy, and closed the journal gently. No words escaped her lips, just the quiet weight of history. The morning sun cast a soft, golden light over the sprawling naval base, illuminating the rows of buildings and the neatly trimmed parade grounds. The air was crisp, filled with the faint scent of pine and dust, carrying a subtle promise of a new day. Verity stood near the edge of the training field, her arms folded across her chest as she watched the recruits assemble. Their faces were young, eager, but untouched by the heavy realities that she carried with her like shadows. Her jacket flapped gently in the breeze, revealing the faint outline of the black trident tattoo beneath her sleeve, a silent emblem of battles waged and sacrifices made far from the public eye. For a moment, Verity closed her eyes, the sounds of the present fading, replaced by the ghosts of the past, distant bursts of gunfire echoing across mountainous terrain, whispered names lost to the wind, and the weight of comrades she'd carried through unforgiving terrain. The memories were a quiet storm within her, ever present, yet always kept beneath the surface. They were the reason for her steel-calm exterior, the unspoken fuel behind every command and every measured word. A soft, deliberate knock on the door behind her pulled her back to the present. Without turning, she recognized the unmistakable gait of Admiral Leon Mercer as he stepped inside, hands clasped behind his back, his posture rigid but his eyes gentle. "Commander," he greeted softly, his voice cutting through the morning stillness. "There's someone here to see you." Verity turned slowly to see Lieutenant Marissa Hale standing in the doorway. The young intelligence officer looked tentative yet determined, her eyes reflecting a mix of professional respect and personal curiosity. Her posture suggested a soldier used to following orders but eager to understand the stories behind the classified files. "The Admiral mentioned you might have answers about the Bugram operation," Marissa began carefully. "I've been digging through the declassified documents. But everything is redacted, blacked out. It's like the mission never happened." Verity nodded, folding her hands behind her back. "Some truths aren't meant for the pages of history books," she said quietly. "Not because they aren't important, but because the wrong ears hearing them could cost lives." Marissa took a cautious step forward, lowering her voice to a near whisper. "There's a letter, Commander, sent from an operative in the field. The name's redacted, but the coordinates match the tattoo on your arm." Verity's gaze dropped to the spot beneath her sleeve. The faded black trident and the coordinates etched there were more than just ink. They were a map of survival and loss. Admiral Mercer cleared his throat, breaking the tension. "Truth is a double-edged sword," he said, voice steady but heavy with years of experience. "It's not always easy to face, but it's necessary, especially for those who serve and those who follow." The room seemed to hold its breath, the silence stretching, thick and reverent. No one dared break the quiet weight of what remained unsaid. Stories buried beneath redactions, shadows of valor hidden from the public eye. Verity finally spoke, her voice measured and calm. "There are things I did during that operation, things I carried long after the guns fell silent. The cost was more than just blood. It was every moment I was absent, every promise I couldn't keep." She turned her gaze toward the recruits now running drills outside, their movements sharp and unbroken. "It's not the medals, or the stories told in bars, or the headlines that define us." She looked back at Marissa, her eyes softening with something almost like hope. "It's what we choose to do with the silence afterward, how we carry the burden, how we teach others to carry it." Marissa nodded, understanding deeper than words. "Then help me tell it, Commander. Help us bring their stories out of the shadows." Verity's lips parted in a small, genuine smile, the first warmth to touch her face in days. "Maybe it's finally time." The small conference room felt worlds away from the roar of the base and the drills on the parade ground. The low hum of the air conditioning mixed with the faint scratch of pens on paper. Walls were lined with maps dotted in red and blue markers, timelines, and cryptic notes from past missions. A whiteboard stood in the corner, cluttered with hastily scrawled dates and acronyms that only insiders understood. Verity sat opposite Marissa Hale, the young intelligence officer who had become her unexpected ally in uncovering the long-buried truths. A stack of documents was pushed across the table, some fresh, some yellowed with age, all marked with bold red stamps and ominous black bars where names and details had been deliberately erased. Marissa spoke quietly, but with conviction. I managed to get some files declassified. It's not everything. Most of it is still redacted. But this is a start. Verity's hands moved over the pages like a soldier surveying a battlefield. Satellite images showing harsh mountain ridges, casualty lists with almost every name blacked out, mission reports with entire paragraphs missing. The silence between the two women was thick with the weight of what had been hidden. They wanted to bury it, Verity said softly, her voice almost a whisper. The operation, the men who didn't come home, the sacrifices. Off the books. Unacknowledged. Forgotten. Marissa nodded, her eyes flickering with a mixture of admiration and sadness. Your team's extraction was never officially recognized. The military wanted plausible deniability. It was so secret that even many commanders didn't know it happened. The men you saved, and those you lost, vanished into classified shadows. Verity closed her eyes briefly, the memories flooding back unbidden. The biting cold of the mountain nights, the relentless grind of dragging 3 wounded men through enemy territory, the sound of distant gunfire echoing in the dark, the prayers whispered for the fallen. The faces of her team flashed behind her eyelids, vivid and haunting. Why now? She asked at last, her voice steady but laden with unspoken pain. Marissa met her gaze. Because of your niece. Because someone needs to tell your story, not just for you, but for every soldier who was left behind in silence. Verity's eyes softened. For the first time in years, a small flame of hope stirred inside her. Then let's begin, she said quietly. The envelope was deceptively plain. A worn, manila sleeve with creases softened from years of handling, and a faint smudge of dirt in one corner. No return address, no insignia, no official markings. Yet, in her hands, it felt heavier than any metal or document she'd ever held. It was as though the weight of all the years, all the silence and secrets, had been compressed into this single piece of paper. Verity carefully peeled the flap, her fingers steady despite the surge of memories rising in her chest. The letter inside was folded with meticulous precision, the paper yellowed but intact, bearing the unmistakable mark of haste and urgency. The handwriting was neat, precise, yet betrayed the tension of a mind racing against time, a voice etched by experience, burden, and loyalty. She unfolded the letter slowly, her eyes scanning the words, each line unlocking long-guarded memories buried beneath layers of restraint and regret. Commander Rains, if you're reading this, I hope it means you've found some measure of peace beyond the chaos we left behind. The operation at Bagram was more than a mission. It was a crucible that forged us in ways no one outside could understand. We lost brothers and sisters whose names have faded from the official records, but not from my memory. Your courage kept us alive in those dark moments, and I owe you more than I can ever say. The letter continued, each word resonating like a solemn confession. There's more you should know, truths that were buried deep to shield us all from further pain. The real enemy wasn't just outside the wire. It was the betrayals within our own chain of command, the politics that endangered us more than the enemy ever could. I pray that one day, these truths will be told, not for glory or revenge, but for justice, remembrance, and healing. Verity's breath hitched, the memories crashing forward, the cold mountain nights, the desperate hours spent dragging wounded men through hostile terrain, the silence that followed every loss. She traced the faint signature at the bottom, just 2 letters, almost a whisper in ink, JT. Marissa looked up from the pile of documents, her expression solemn. JT was your point man on that extraction, a legend who disappeared from the service shortly after. No one really knows what happened to him. Verity's lips pressed into a thin line. He saved my life that day, she said quietly, and he paid a price I still carry with me. The room settled into a heavy silence, thick with the unspoken weight of sacrifices made in shadows. Those who gave everything without recognition, those whose stories had been erased by time and redactions. Marissa broke the stillness. If we tell the story, all of it, maybe we can finally give them the honor they deserve. Verity folded the letter with deliberate care, the edges crisp against her fingertips. Her gaze lifted to the window, where the sun filtered through and cast long, hopeful shadows across the floor. Now, she said, voice steady but resolute, we tell the story. The full truth. No more silence. A small, determined smile touched her lips. The burden she carried wasn't lighter, but for the first time in years, it felt shared. The weight of the letter lingered heavily in Verity's mind as she stepped into the Stark conference room. The air was thick with quiet tension, punctuated only by the shuffling of papers and low murmurs between high-ranking officers and officials. The room was filled with a mix of generals, admirals, and civilian defense staff, men and women who held the power to rewrite history or bury it deeper. She was no longer the shadow in the background, the silent operator who carried secrets in her bones. Today, she stood firmly in the light, ready to speak the truths that had been smothered for years. I am here not to reopen old wounds for the sake of conflict, Verity began, her voice steady and resolute, but to confront a past that has been deliberately silenced. The mission epigram was real. The sacrifices made by those men, my brothers and sisters in arms, were real, and the erasure of their service is an injustice that cannot stand. A few faces in the room tightened, some exchanging subtle glances. One general cleared his throat, leaning forward with a measured tone. Commander, classified operations are precisely that, classified. They exist to protect ongoing missions and the lives of those involved. To reveal details now could compromise security. Verity met his gaze squarely, unflinching. I fully understand the importance of operational security, but there is a profound difference between protecting lives and erasing them. The men who gave everything deserve recognition. Their families deserve answers, and the nation owes them the truth. At that moment, Marissa Hale stepped forward, her presence calm but firm. We've gathered new evidence, communication logs, eyewitness accounts, and documents previously withheld from public and military archives. This is not speculation, it is fact. The time for transparency is now. A murmur spread through the room, some skeptical, some hopeful. Another voice challenged. What about the risks to personnel currently deployed? Could this jeopardize their safety? Verity's reply was unwavering. The only security we owe those who serve is honesty. Silence breeds resentment and dishonor. Truth is the foundation of trust. The room fell into a heavy silence, the kind that fills the space between words with meaning. Finally, the commanding officer nodded slowly. We will review this evidence thoroughly. Should it be verified, we will take appropriate steps to address the oversights. Verity allowed herself a quiet nod. This was not the end. It was not a victory, but it was a beginning, the first step toward justice and remembrance. The afternoon sun was fierce, casting sharp, dancing shadows across the firing range. The metallic clang of bullets striking steel rang out steadily as the recruits practiced their marksmanship. Sweat beaded on foreheads, and the air was thick with the scent of gunpowder and dust. Verity stood off to the side, arms crossed, eyes keenly observing every movement. The tattoo on her left shoulder, partially visible beneath her rolled-up sleeve, caught the glint of sunlight. It was a faded black trident, the iconic Navy SEAL insignia, its edges softened by years of sun, salt, and sweat. To the untrained eye, it was just a mark, but to those who knew, it was a living testament to battles fought in silence and shadows. Private Chun, the young recruit who had begun to see beyond the surface, stole a glance at the tattoo more than once. Eventually, during a quiet moment when the range was emptying, he approached her, his voice tentative yet respectful. "Ma'am, if you don't mind me asking, what does your tattoo mean?" Verity regarded him for a long moment, measuring the question, the boy's sincerity. Then she gave a slow nod and spoke, her voice low and steady, carrying the weight of experience. "It's the Navy SEAL trident. But it's more than just a symbol. It's a promise, a reminder etched on my skin." She paused, eyes drifting toward the distant mountains beyond the range, where memories of covert missions and lost comrades still lingered like ghosts. Each line, each shadow of this tattoo tells a story. Stories of missions where silence was the only option, where trust was everything, and failure meant more than just losing a battle, where brothers and sisters didn't come home, where the fight never truly ended. Her gaze returned to Chun, steady and honest. "This tattoo, it's not just about who I was in uniform. It's a vow to carry those memories, to honor those who can't speak for themselves, even when the world forgets." Chun nodded slowly, absorbing the gravity beneath her words. "Thank you for sharing that, ma'am. I don't think I ever realized." She smiled faintly, the first softness he'd seen from her. "One day, you'll have stories of your own. But remember this, strength isn't just about firepower or medals. It's about what you carry inside, long after the guns fall silent." The two stood in quiet understanding, the fading sunlight painting the range gold. The base lay wrapped in a deep, tranquil silence as Verity stirred awake before dawn. The soft hum of distant generators and the occasional clink of metal from a far-off guard post were the only sounds that disturbed the stillness. The dim glow of early morning filtered faintly through the blackout curtains, casting long shadows across the sparse furniture of her quarters. She sat on the edge of the bed, eyes distant, mind wandering through the labyrinth of memories she had long kept locked away. The weight of years spent in shadows, the faces of comrades lost or changed forever, the cost of missions never spoken about beyond whispered debriefings and classified files. Reaching out, Verity grasped a small, worn photograph on the nightstand. The edges were frayed, and the colors slightly faded, but the image was sharp in her mind, a rare moment of fragile camaraderie. Her team, standing shoulder to shoulder, smiles forced but genuine, eyes tired but determined. The faces of men and women who had fought beside her, some still missing in action, others gone forever, swallowed by the unforgiving landscapes where their sacrifices had been made. Her fingers traced the outline of a scar hidden beneath the collar of her shirt, a jagged line, pale against her skin, a physical remnant of a firefight deep in the Hindu Kush Mountains. It was a wound that never fully healed, both on the surface and in the recesses of her mind. The scar was a constant reminder, not just of pain or injury, but of endurance and survival. A symbol of the battles fought in silence, the quiet resilience that defined her existence beyond the uniform. As she rose and moved toward the small mirror on the wall, Verity's reflection bore the weariness of a soldier marked by time. The calm strength in her eyes belied the storms raging beneath the surface, unseen scars that ran deeper than any bullet wound. A soft knock at the door interrupted her solitude. Lily, her niece, stepped inside quietly, her footsteps barely making a sound on the worn floor. Her young face was marked with concern and the tentative understanding only someone who loves can offer. "Are you okay, Aunt Verity?" she asked gently, her voice a whisper meant to bridge the silence. Verity turned, allowing herself a small, genuine smile. She crossed the room and pulled Lily into a brief, warm embrace, a moment of comfort in a world often too harsh. "More than okay," Verity whispered back, her voice steady but soft. "Just remembering." Lily nodded, eyes wide but knowing, absorbing the weight behind the words. "You carry a lot," she said simply, her innocence mixed with quiet wisdom. Verity looked down at her niece, then back into her eyes, a gentle seriousness in her tone. "Sometimes, the scars we don't see hurt the most," she said. They sat together on the edge of the bed, the room slowly brightening as the first light of morning crept through the window. In that shared quiet, there was a wordless understanding, an unspoken bond of strength, resilience, and love. It was a moment of peace amid the turmoil, a reminder that even the deepest wounds could be met with quiet grace. The base was buzzing with activity that morning. The steady clatter of trays, the hum of quiet conversations, and the distant drone of vehicles moving through the compound. The mess hall was a cacophony of sounds, familiar and comforting to those who had lived the rigorous routine of military life. Yet, as Verity entered, a subtle shift rippled through the crowd. Conversations faltered mid-sentence. Eyes flickered toward her with a mix of curiosity, reverence, and something deeper, recognition. She moved with quiet purpose to a corner table, worn smooth by years of hands that had held coffee cups, shared stories, and made silent promises. The scarred wood beneath her fingertips was a testament to countless untold tales. Moments after she sat, Private Chun approached, his steps hesitant, the weight of unspoken words evident in his posture. "Commander," he said softly, balancing a tray loaded with food. "The others, they've been talking. About you. About the missions. The tattoo. The scars." Verity lifted her gaze, meeting his eyes directly, steady and calm, filled with the resolve forged from years of sacrifice. "They're beginning to understand," she replied quietly, her voice steady. "That there's always more beneath the surface than what meets the eye." Chin nodded, a flicker of admiration and newfound respect shining in his eyes. The young recruit, once tentative and uncertain, now carried a seed of understanding planted by her quiet strength. At that moment, Lieutenant Marissa Hale joined them, carrying a thick folder brimming with carefully compiled evidence. Her expression was serious but hopeful. "We've submitted the report to the higher-ups," she said quietly, lowering the folder onto the table. "The process has started. It won't be quick, but it's moving forward." Verity folded her hands in front of her, the burden she had carried for so long beginning to lighten. The path ahead was uncertain, but this was a beginning. "This is about more than just recognition," she said thoughtfully. "It's about restoring honor to those who gave everything in silence, whose sacrifices were overlooked, and whose stories deserve to be told." Around them, the noise of the mess hall seemed to fade, as if the world itself had paused to acknowledge the weight of that truth. The moment hung heavy in the air, a silent acknowledgement of past pain, resilience, and hope for justice. The evening air was cool and still, carrying the faint scent of pine and distant earth. Verity stood alone on the balcony that overlooked the sprawling base, the vastness of the military installation stretching out beneath her like a silent city of memories. Twilight was settling in, the sky deepening from soft purples to the inky black of night, stars punctuating the horizon with cold, steady light. The hum of activity below had faded to a muted whisper, the distant sounds of vehicles returning to their quarters, the low murmur of voices winding down after a long day. But in the quiet that surrounded her, Verity's mind was anything but still. Her thoughts drifted through the tangled web of her past, the faces of comrades who had shared battles and burdens alike. Some were still out there, their fates unknown. Others had been lost, swallowed by the unforgiving landscapes they had fought in, their stories erased by time and secrecy. The weight of those memories pressed down on her shoulders like an invisible armor, heavy and unyielding. Yet beneath that weight, there was a steady flame, burning quietly, a resolve that refused to be extinguished. The soft sound of footsteps interrupted the stillness. Verity turned to see Lily stepping onto the balcony, her young face serious, eyes wide with a quiet determination that both surprised and comforted Verity. Despite her youth, Lily carried the strength of her lineage in the way she stood, shoulders squared and voice steady. "I'm proud of you," Lily said simply, her words carrying the weight of unspoken understanding. Verity's face softened, a small smile touching the corners of her eyes that had seen far too much but still held warmth. "Thank you, kiddo," she replied, her voice gentle but firm. "It's not about me. It never was." Lily nodded thoughtfully, her gaze drifting to the darkening horizon. It's about the ones who didn't get to come home. Verity reached out, her fingers curling around her niece's hand with a quiet reverence. And I'll carry their stories every day. Their names, their sacrifices, it's my promise. They stood together in companionable silence, the cool breeze threading through their hair as the night deepened. The world around them seemed to hold its breath, as if honoring the weight of that moment, the passing of responsibility, the silent vow to remember, and to keep fighting in ways beyond the battlefield. In that stillness, the bond between them was clear, a quiet resolve that bridged generations, rooted in honor and remembrance. Verity's journey was far from over, but in that moment, beneath the vastness of the stars, she knew she would never walk it alone. The morning was thick with the kind of gray that blunts the edges of everything it touches, the sky heavy with low-hanging clouds, casting a muted light across the sprawling naval base. The usual vibrancy of the day seemed subdued, as if the very air had shifted, waiting, charged with a quiet energy that rippled beneath the surface. Verity stood just outside the headquarters building, her posture composed yet unassuming. The uniform she wore was impeccable, but it was the subtle details that drew attention. The faded black trident tattoo barely visible beneath the rolled-up sleeve of her jacket, the faint scars tracing stories no one dared ask about. She was a figure of calm amidst the steady bustle of soldiers moving about their duties, their conversations subdued in the growing hush. The sound of engines broke the stillness, the sharp yet measured rumble of a motorcade approaching. Black SUVs rolled in with practiced precision, moving through the gates like a silent procession. As the vehicles came to a halt, the crowd instinctively fell silent, sensing something momentous about to unfold. Admiral Leon Mercer stepped out of the lead vehicle, his tall frame casting a long shadow across the stone steps. His face was a study in solemnity, eyes sharp and discerning, yet carrying the weight of years spent in service alongside Verity, though many here only knew him as a distant authority. His gaze found Verity's immediately, drawn to the exposed skin of her shoulder where the worn trident tattoo peeked out from beneath her jacket. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to hold its breath. Time slowed, the murmurs faded, and the gravity of the moment anchored itself in the silent space between them. The Admiral reached up with a deliberate grace, touched the brim of his cap, and offered a slow, deliberate salute. The gesture was not merely protocol. It was an unspoken acknowledgement of everything Verity had endured, the sacrifices made in shadows, the battles fought without fanfare or recognition. That single salute sent a ripple through the gathered soldiers and civilians alike. Skepticism dissolved into respect. Whispers turned into nods of understanding. In that charged silence, the true measure of her service was finally seen and honored. Verity returned the salute with steady composure, her expression calm, but carrying the quiet dignity of a warrior who had borne her burdens in silence for far too long. There was no need for words or speeches. The moment spoke volumes without uttering a sound. As Admiral Mercer lowered his hand and turned to leave, the weight that had long pressed upon Verity's shoulders lifted, replaced by a profound sense of closure. Her honor, once questioned and obscured, was reclaimed not through violence or defiance, but through presence, truth, and the unwavering strength of her character. She remained standing, the last light of the morning breaking through the clouds and casting a soft glow around her silhouette. In that final salute, a legacy was sealed, a testament to the quiet heroes who serve in the shadows and whose stories deserve to be told. Thank you for following this story. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and share your thoughts below. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. Stay tuned for more immersive tactical stories.